Nigeria, Bukola Saraki is a free man.
Yes, indeed. Now, the Code of Conduct Tribunal dismissed and acquitted him of 18-count charge of false assets declaration and money laundering. Let's hear this.
Analysis of the Code of Conduct Tribunal was devoid of the razzmatazz typical of the trial of the Senate President. More so, just a handful of his supporters were on hand. Then came the decision of the Code of Conduct Tribunal, read by its chairman, Justice Danladi Umar. He ruled that in spite of fielding 4 witnesses, the prosecution could not prove its case against the former governor of Kwara State. Justice Umar held that the witness testimonies were inconsistent. More so, the prosecution failed to link Saraki with the offenses despite the 48 exhibits it tendered. The tribunal, for want of sufficient evidence, discharged and acquitted Senator Saraki. The Senate President's supporters went into a frenzy.
No, let me put my own. It's too long.
We've never felt that justice was not possible. Those complaints were based on the events of the time. But we are happy that the verdict has vindicated the position of the Senate President. If we had really felt that we could not get justice here, we would have proceeded to the Supreme Court when our application for the chairman to recuse himself was refused. But we were confident that our protests and all of that would make an impact, and that in the end justice would be done.
It's not an end. We have not come to the end. This is a ruling, and we have already started making arrangements to get a copy of the ruling. We study it, and then we know the next line of action, what next to do.
The prosecution had on 5 occasions brought new counts against the Senate President, and the charges had risen from 13 to 18, yet it was unable to prove its case. For now, the Senate President can heave a sigh of relief. Sifon Esien, TVC News, Abuja.
All right, that's the background to the story now. We have lawyer and activist Ahmed Abbas in the studio. Ahmed, it's good to have you join us right now.
Morning.
Good morning.
Since this ruling, because the lawyer there on the report said it's a ruling. So since this ruling, a lot of Nigerians are not necessarily happy with the outcome. What did you, I know you've been following this issue. We've had you here several times talk about this trial, even from the first day that the Senate President was arraigned at the CCT. What was your reaction when you heard that he has no case to answer?
For me, looking at the mood of the nation, I mean, it's obvious that people are not happy, because it seems the forces that are bent on destroying Nigeria are still at work, because the issues were very clear. Of course, in a civilized climate, the courts are there to determine who is guilty and who is not guilty. But most times, any lawyer will tell you, the facts can be very clear, but if the presentation somehow is bungled and faulty.
That's the technicality.
Because law has 2 components: substantive law, that defines what's an offense, the elements of an offense. And they could be very straightforward. They could be very clear. You can even be an eyewitness. Then the procedural law stipulates how you can approach the court to establish the commission of those offenses. Even if a man commits an offense with all the elements on ground, in the process of approaching the court, if you bungle or your procedure is faulty, you could lose the case, even when it's very obvious that the offense was actually committed.
And that seems to be what has happened now. Isha Sage, a well-respected lawyer, said he was shocked. I mean, shock was the word that he used, that in spite of the preponderance of evidence, there was nothing to nail the Senate President, Bukola Saraki.
If you look at the reasons the tribunal adduced, the tribunal said, one, the first prosecution witness, the second prosecution witness, that their testimonies are unreliable.
And wishy-washy.
Wishy-washy. And that, for example, they said Saraki's statement was not included in the evidence, proof of evidence adduced before the court. Because the principle of fair hearing probably was not followed. If you accuse a man of having committed an offense, you must give him the opportunity to state his own side. Whether you believe his own side or not is a different ballgame entirely. When you are, bringing your proof of evidence before the court, you would say this is his statement, this is the statement of the witnesses. It is the court's prerogative to look at both sides and say, well, based on these two sides of the story, I think I believe this. So in procedural law, if it's faulty, there could be problem. Like, even when you have, like, for example, let me just tell you one of the things I saw there.
Yeah.
The court said that there were allegations that while he was in office, that he operated a foreign account.
While he was governor.
While he was governor. They brought the head of the fund transfer unit of GT as a witness. And they came to tell the court that, sorry, the documents to back that allegation has been burnt in a fire. So I simply will sit there and say, look, it's a conspiracy. I'm sorry, there is a conspiracy by the institutions. An American president said, he said, the two greatest enemies of the people are criminals and the government and its institution. And he said, we need to use constitutional restraint to chain the former, or is it the latter now, so that it will not become the legalized form of the latter.
So it becomes a norm.
It becomes a norm.
Where do you find this constitutional restraint? Within the same system?
I was here one time and I said, we need to rethink the philosophy behind the entire procedure that governs Nigeria, because if you are a student of Nigerian history, what is happening defies logic completely, absolutely, turns logic upside down. That what works in other climes doesn't seem to work here. And so a professor of law, Unilag, propounded it one day and said, probably this presumption of innocence, we should discard it and probably reintroduce another philosophy that says you are presumed guilty until you can prove yourself innocent.
Like it's done in France,
for example. 500 million naira in my bank account, I should intelligently be able to explain to Nigerians how I came about 100 million naira. It shouldn't be the duty of somebody saying, look, we have 100 million naira in your account, and all your life you've been a public officer. Your entire salary for 50 years of your life, even if you are allowed, can't amount to 100 million naira. It should be incumbent on you to explain scientifically and intelligently
how you got the money,
how you accumulated 100 million naira being a public servant.
But in this same country, when a chief of army staff was questioned for properties in Dubai, for example, the same government cleared him and said, for a man of his position, he could have been able to save up money to afford such property. And so now, people have described this particular judgment as a total setback in the war against corruption. Is that where you stand?
No. Because that is not the end of the case. Okay. The federal government said they are going to go back to the drawing board and re-strategize. It's one goal down. But I'm fully persuaded that when people are desirous of change, it will only take time. The vast majority of Nigerians are disgusted, angry about the situation we find ourselves.
Are we really? If we truly
are. It's because you do not interrogate the ordinary man on the street. Please, just pardon me. Yes. When the 2015 election was coming, I have friends and cousins who were very close to PDP. And he was telling me, he said, power of incumbency, the money at their disposal, the control of the machinery of state will give them victory. I told him something. I said, can I tell you the honest truth? Most times the political class, they ride on their high horses and do not actually know what is going on the streets of Nigeria. I told him, I said, you don't know, people are disgusted. There's going to be a change, whether you like it or not. He was very cocksure. I said, probably you are listening to the echoes of your own voice. Yes, you can actually go into a room and shout, I'm the greatest. And come out and tell the public, I had a voice in the room saying, I'm the greatest.
I am the greatest.
And the sound will really
I told him, I said,
really
you're engaging in self-illusion.
Yeah.
Nigerians are tired.
But the Senate president, in going into this case, actually said he was sure, well, you know, following the outcome, that he was sure that this case was going to go the way it did eventually.
They accuse him of...
What do you make of that?
Look, he was accused of false declaration of assets. That ordinarily, when you are going into offices, they give you a form to fill. Declare all your assets. Some assets were not declared.
And the so-called anticipatory declaration of assets?
Even if you even leave that, like I said, it's just like the case of Ibori. He was not found guilty of stealing, but he was found guilty of money laundering. Money laundering is the byproduct of stealing. It's only in Nigeria that can happen. He was discharged and acquitted of all charges. But another crime, a civilized crime, where they do not take nonsense, found him guilty of being in possession of proceeds of fraud and stealing. But your country, our country,
where the original
stealing took place, and from which we had to create an emergency federal high court division in Asaba to try him, found him not guilty of any of those charges. It's, you know, abracadabra. The more you do, the
less you see.
Wow.
Okay, maybe we should bring in Olabode.
We have Olabode Oseni joining us from, he's a lawyer, joining us from London on Skype. Olabode, it's good to have you join us right now. I know you've been following developments in Nigeria, especially on the case we're talking about here. The EFCC has had issues in court. This is not the first. This wasn't the second. But it simply didn't do its work. It didn't do its homework well. What's your assessment of the outcome of the judgment against the Senate president?
Thank you very much and good morning. And thank you again for having me. As a legal consultant, judgment like this, you don't rush to make your own comments. You need to look at the judgment holistically and then look at what you can find as, you know, missing links or something like that. Now, we have a huge problem in our hands in Nigeria. I was listening to the gentleman in your studio, and also I've been listening to other station channels to hear the opinions of other people, lawyers, and so on and so forth. Here we have a situation where one out of thousands other people who are terrorizing Nigeria. You don't need to be an armed robber, you don't need to be a kidnapper to be terrorizing people. We have very few people who are taking advantage of millions of people that they're supposed to lead. They are stealing their money day in, day out. Now, but let's stay with this case of CCT. Again, the man took advantage and said, you know what, prosecution has not proven their case. In law, you have to live with that for now. But there's a good to it. The good part of it is there are three possibilities to appeal this case. An ordinary man who is aggrieved in Ekpe can go to court and say, you know what, I'm not happy with this judgment. The EFCC can also appeal it. The federal government can also appeal it. So, but let's discount the first one, because the first one will not have money to hire 106 sand. EFCC can afford that. Federal government can afford. $1 million question is, are they going to do that? And like I said, these are very few people who are terrorizing Nigeria. They can get away. They can hire so many lawyers at billions of naira. They don't care. All right,
Olabode, let me come in here. Let me come in, if I may interject. If indeed the EFCC goes ahead to appeal this case, which it has said it will do, and in this particular ruling, the CCT has said prosecution was totally, I mean, for want of a better word, wishy-washy. That's how they actually described it. Now, without doing their homework properly and ensuring that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, if they go ahead to appeal this case, will it not be the same outcome?
No, I disagree with that. The common sense dictates that if you want to appeal a case, if you lose it in the first place, you must do your homework, and I'm sure there's a time bar. Within this short period of time, they can now also reassemble lawyers that will deal with this case more effectively as it was in the first place. And that's another opportunity, a golden opportunity for millions of Nigerians. Again, I need to say this openly. I am not saying, I am not trying to display a way like I have something or anything against the defendant, the person of the Senate President Saraki. No, I'm just saying justice has to be done, and by the way it is now, I'm happy majority of the legal profession are now saying this has not been handled properly. The CCT take advantage of a very shoddy job of the prosecution. But again, like I said, the good news is people can still appeal this case, and I believe as a Nigerian, even though I'm resident here, that should be pursued. So if it's properly put together again, there's a very high hope of getting justice, and justice should be demanded for by Nigerians.
All right, Olabode, let's put you on hold. We'll come back to you shortly. Let's bring in Foladele to give us a reaction on social media. Let's hear what Nigerians are saying on this. Fola, good morning.
Morning, Fola.
Good morning, Asmi.
Good morning.
Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Good morning, Olabode. Okay, so
good morning.
I'm sure you can already guess
Yeah.
that, you know,
What Nigerians are saying.
they're going wild, believe me. Let's find out. Vivi Vada Vago says EFCC should kukuma release all the Yahoo boys that is in their custody since Saraki and Orubebe are clean. Even kidnappers too safe. Tila says, so much criticism, CCT and EFCC. Don't get it twisted, I beg. Even if EFCC were prosecuting Saraki, the planned drama would still continue. Obriki says, EFCC lost against Saraki, lost against Fayoshe, lost against Patience. It only means that Magu is incompetent. Josh Mode says, Saraki just defeated Buhari and EFCC. Why did they delay the case initially? Olukayede says, there was no contest between corruption and Nigeria. They are both siblings.
Corruption and Nigeria?
And Nigeria are siblings, that there is no fight. There was no Nigeria siblings, that there is no fight. There was no contest.
Wow.
Shehu Audu says, now that Senator Saraki's case at the CCT has been forgiven in what seems like a negotiated deal, may we confirm Mr. Magu as the EFCC chair? And Onuke Christian says, now that Saraki, Fayoshe and their likes are buying and manipulating judgment, are they not rubbishing EFCC and the fight against corruption? And, well, you said we're still on track with the fight, Ahmed. I heard you say that earlier, that, look, we're still on track. We shouldn't give up yet. There's still maybe 45 minutes to go. We're still at halftime or whatever, you know, we're just a goal down. But how do you see this playing out? I heard Ngozi asking Olabode a bit about that, and I know you touched a bit on that. But how do you see this playing out? You said, look, there's still hope. So what do you think will happen? Given history, given, you know, how EFCC have laid out their cases
Looking
in the past.
at scenarios.
In the past.
Yeah. The forces of darkness have never triumphed in any nation. It takes time. And I can tell you, vast majority of Nigerians, millions in their numbers, they are committed, desirous, praying, working hard in their own little way to ensure the evolution of a decent society. We will triumph. We will triumph. It's a question of time. The pressure must keep, those that are advocating must keep advocating. The media must keep pointing the reality. Those that are social engineers must constantly point the society. You see, one of the reasons why we advocate is that social engineers are normally the ones that point the society where they should be going. It's not as if we don't have work that we want to do, but pointing the society, the danger is that, you see, when institutions break down, we should learn from history. When you institutions that are supposed to be, you know, the arms of government seeking the welfare of the Nigerians people, because constitutionally we are told the essence of governance is the welfare and security of the people. When you abandon that and you have a rapacious and Bucharian political class who are bent on looting the nation dry, you are setting a stage for a mind-boggling revolution.
Okay, so now, Foladele, I guess we'll have to let you go at this point then.
Thank
now, what do you make of the sudden reawakening of the investigation of the CCT chairman in the person of Danladi Umar, following the outcome of this Saraki case?
Well, I've not actually, you know, I've not seen this thing. If that is the case, if anybody, see, nobody is above the law in this country, and we must allow institutions to do their job. If the agencies believe the man has a case to answer, I mean, let them investigate him.
The same agency that cleared him before and said he had no case to answer? The same EFCC cleared him before?
See, constantly, facts, fresh facts may emerge. Bill Clinton was cleared by FBI that she has no case to answer concerning her email. Just some few days before the election, they came back and said, well, we are re-examining the email issue and all the rest of them. If new facts emerge, we can't, the institutions should be allowed to do their job.
Okay, let's bring in back Olabode Oseni in here. Now, there has been in the works arrangement towards the process of instituting a special courts for corruption, and Nigerians have been looking forward to that all the while. Now, if it is succeeded or it becomes successful that we have a special courts, what will be different in their fight against corruption and prosecuting corruption cases than what is going on right now?
If that comes to be, probably there will be more fast track of processing and prosecuting the people that are charged. But let me quickly digress just for a second. You see, it's only in Nigeria or in Africa that we do not obey rules, laws, and regulations. We have a situation. Isn't that mockery also of justice when the chairman of that particular CCT is also a client of EFCC? What are we talking about? And I remember following the prosecution that the defendant team, legal team, were even accusing him that he's not supposed to be the person sitting on that particular chair. For some reasons, they come about it and say, well, he has been cleared. You know, there's so many messes, things that is going on in the country. And again, just give me 1 second. I've listened and listened to issue of agitation. So long you keep excluding ordinary people in any form of governance, you will continue to have problems. I will always say it. You cannot deprive millions of people. You now cannot make ordinary basic things available for people, and you want to get peace, you're not going to get peace.
All right, let me stay with you, Olabode Oseni, very quickly. Now, the question of creating a system that will discourage graft in the first place, that is coming to the fore again, that there may be a need for the government to re-strategize on its war against corruption. This is what this particular case is bringing up. What do you think?
Well, again, I hope if that formation is going to come up, you will do better, you do justice if you assemble honest and people of caliber that has at credibility. You're not going to just bring chop and chop judges or lawyers together. You see, because if the foundation of anything is not solid, you will always get this kind of crumble situation. That would be nice. If government say, you know what, let us create a fast-tracking system where this is going to be only for prosecuting bribery and corruption cases, but we have seen it. Tell me how many people that has been prosecuted. Tell me how many people have been jailed. We're talking of corruption. Corruption is the biggest.
All right, Abbas has to jump in here at this point very quickly.
I do not subscribe to the idea of constantly creating SPVs, special purpose vehicles for every offense. There is absolutely nothing wrong with all our extant law presently.
I'm not even asking about special vehicles and all of that. I'm talking about the war against corruption generally.
Yeah.
If there is a need to re-strategize, I mean,
Absolutely.
plug the loopholes that allow for graft to happen in the first place.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's need for it. And capacity building of the law enforcement agencies is something. We must partner international organizations that have the wherewithal, the resource, the capability to actually train our men, because most of the cases that EFCC has been losing in the recent past as a result of technicalities. We are all aware that these offenses are committed, but in establishing those offenses before the court has been a major problem.
All right, Ahmed Abbas, thank you very much for lending a voice on the program this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And Olabode Oseni, thank you very much for joining us from London via Skype. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for having me, Mike.
Right.